Thanks, Ron. So, good morning, folks. Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Talbot. I'm a sales engineer here at HYCU, and I've been in the backup space now for, I would say, over 10 years now, and even further back then in storage. And I've worked at other backup vendors and manufacturers working on deduplication appliances. So my focus has always been, data protection. And HYCU, I work with customers in the central region, focusing on POCs, providing solutions that help address their data protection challenges they're facing, especially today's market, with concerns over disaster recovery, ransomware protection, and security. Okay, so today we're actually going to talk about migrating workloads without the complexity, risk, and costs associated with hybrid multi-cloud worlds. So we'll follow up also with a demo after the slides here. Okay. So here's the agenda. We're going to set the stage here, talk about your hybrid cloud world, with multi-clouds, on-prem, and hyperscalers. Most typical journey into the cloud, and also then introduce the HYCU Protégé, the solution that we use at HYCU for protecting workloads in the cloud, also on-prem. Then following, showing a quick demo where we can actually do a spin up into the cloud, because we talk a lot about lift and shift, moving workloads from on-prem into AWS, for example, or bringing it back as well. And we'll be able to show you how we can achieve both there. And then at the end, we'll also touch on our recently announced SaaS solution called rGraph, which helps address data protection challenges in the SaaS world. There's over 17,000 SaaS applications in the US, and a lot of them have no data protection built in. And we actually have a solution to address those challenges. Okay. So when we look at the hybrid multi-cloud world, we should set the stage. Over the past few years, a lot of organizations have undergone a modernization effort to transition to hybrid or multi-cloud environments. In fact, over 82% of enterprises are currently using a hybrid cloud model, and over 90% of large enterprises have adopted a multi-cloud infrastructure. And hybrid cloud models that incorporate both on-prem and cloud-based resources have become the norm for mid-market and enterprise businesses. And it's very common today to see orgs with different workloads running across different clouds or on-premises sites, from virtual machines to SQL databases to SaaS workloads such as Microsoft 365. It's all needed to keep a business running day to day. And this is the hybrid multi-cloud world we live in today. So, but oftentimes migrating these workloads to and from between clouds is not so straightforward. Maybe you want to migrate a database SQL server from on-prem into Azure, for example, right? Having the different environments that potentially put the business at risk, as things like security and compliance require validation for those migration efforts. And in fact, you look at the journey of to the cloud, it can feel a little bumpy, a ride sometimes. And this is a good analogy here, with many challenges that create some turbulence. And so those challenges can be cost, as an example, cost to migrate on-premise workloads, time needed to migrate these workloads, or even complexity. How much effort is needed by your IT team to migrate these workloads? And all that could add to risk and to security concerns or data loss, and obviously the increase in threat of ransomware. So if you don't consider and plan for these challenges, then it can easily hinder your modernization effort, decreasing your business agility, and ultimately leaving you behind your competition. But how do you ensure a safe journey to the cloud so you don't get left behind? And that's with the right solution and the right migration for your business, a solution that recognizes and solves your challenges, ensuring a safe and expedited journey to the cloud. So by lowering complexity, lowering your risk, and also meeting your budgetary goals. And in fact, that's exactly what HYCU delivers to you, making it safer and cost-effective means to migrate your data to the cloud so you can take advantage of the benefits of the hybrid and multi-cloud faster and stay ahead of the competition. But how does HYCU uniquely accomplish this? And that's really our bread and butter here. It's by being application centric, so ensuring all your applications migrated are consistent with no corruptions and are recoverable in the event of a ransomware attack. It's purpose built. We use a patented automated application discovery process that allows us to easily migrate to the cloud without the complicated hassle for scripts or labor intensive work. And then finally, it's simple, lift and shift in minutes. We do all that heavy lifting so you can get to the cloud faster. And in the demo, we'll do that example of the lift and shift using a spin up feature. And all this, gives us an on-demand migration across platform data mobility without disruption and data loss. And if you look at the architecture here, and this is an example on the left-hand side of the diagram, we have the on-prem environment. You have multiple VMs, physical servers in a virtual environment, and you have multiple applications riding on top of that, right? So how is this going to migrate over? It's simple, really. It's cost effective. We help you empower your DR strategy by gaining agility to restore into the cloud of your choosing. You lower compute costs requiring only during DR or DR test, and avoid egress costs of public clouds. You can see on the right-hand side, those are the three main hyperscalers. We make it very easy for you to migrate those workloads, lift and shifts, into those other clouds and running as a native instance. For example, we can spin up a VMware server that's on-prem as an EC2 instance in AWS and bring it back as well if we need to. And we can do that without by minimizing the resources required in the cloud. For example, we don't need constant compute resources running in AWS for that purpose. We only send copy and backup data into the object storage inside those cloud targets. Okay. And this goes to our foundation, Protégé. HYCU was founded on that notion that there's a better, more effective way to protect that mission critical data, make it easy for you to migrate it across those different clouds. And that's what we built with Protégé. It's really a SaaS platform that unifies data protection for hybrid and multi-cloud environments. So it helps businesses with a simple way to manage and see and protect your mission critical data across all the various environments. And it gives you visibility through reporting, through computer compliance, and ensuring that you're meeting your RTOs and RPOs of your data, and makes it also easy to automate those transitions between the various environments as well. And as you can see here, this is the screen you see in the center here is essentially our UI, which I'll get to here in a minute with the demo. But these are the 6 pillars: backup and recovery, disaster recovery, data mobility, which we'll talk about here in the demonstration shortly, and having ransomware protection, being able to back up to immutable storage, for example, AWS S3 using immutable buckets, so we can prevent cyber incidents, being hybrid multi-cloud aware, and then having security and compliance. And this applies across, as you can see on the bottom left here, your on-prem infrastructure, whether we're talking about virtual machines, NAS environments, as well as applications and databases, providing application consistent backup and recovery of the most common databases like SQL and Oracle. And then finally, also protecting your cloud SaaS products like Okta and Jira, Google Workspace, or M365. So it's having that unified single pane of glass underneath Protégé is what helps our customers automate the solutions for them. Okay. And with that, let me go ahead and fire up our UI here. And Ron, let me know if you see any questions that come up that I need to address here.
I think we're good. We've
Okay.
got another about 8 minutes or so, but this is the key thing to really show how it works. I'm going to encourage you to say, even if you're not a HYCU user, maybe you can add comments, Carlos, on how easy it is to get this deployed in your environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the HYCU software, when we're talking on-prem, this is what we're logging into right now. It's a simple VM that runs in your VMware environment or Nutanix environment. But I'll show you also our cloud solution, HYCU for AWS, for Azure. That's actually a true SaaS solution. There's no software to deploy, nothing to upgrade, but you'll see how easy it is to log in here. I'm using my single sign-on with Microsoft. You'll see that we have support for Okta, as well as other identity providers, as well as support for multi-factor authentication. We can ensure that all our users that log into the platform have two-factor authentication. So it's a very hardened, as I mentioned, it's a Linux appliance under the covers, but it's very hardened and bulletproof. So when I first log in here, the first thing I land in is our dashboard, which gives you a top level view of our environment, the servers we're protecting, how many applications we're protecting, but also more importantly, whether we're in compliance or not. You can see we have our policies below here. And that means in compliance in terms of, are we meeting our RPOs for our applications? Are we meeting our RTOs? Because we actually will monitor and measure the throughput to our backup targets, so that we're ensuring that if a disaster occurs, especially during like a ransomware incident, or because a lot of backup vendors today, they claim that they protect you from immutability, but they don't talk about recovery times. So we actually will monitor and validate that, hey, if you have an incident, you got to recover my data here. We ensure that you are in compliance by the designated RTOs that you specify within your policies. Okay. So let's go and actually look at a VM that we want to do a spin up. And this is an example of all of the VMs in my data center. Some are sitting on Nutanix clusters, others are on VMware. And you'll see that some of them have designated icons to remind you that these are DR cloud ready. And the one we're going to work with here is Azure, but you can see a couple of these are also in AWS. What this means is that I actually have a backup, a copy of this VM in an object storage container inside AWS S3 storage, or it could be Azure Blob, or even Google storage, right? But this reminds me that I can go ahead and do a spin up. Now, normally you would recover this workload on-prem because maybe you lost the VM in your data center. You want to do a quick recovery. That's what the restore options are normally available to us for. But then you also have the spin up, and this goes back to the whole lift and shift idea, being able to migrate a workload into the cloud, or even during an emergency, because maybe you lost this environment, or you lost this VM entirely, and you want to migrate it permanently into the cloud. So we're going to work through that exercise right here. I'll click on that here, and you can see that I have the option of all the 3 different hyperscalers that I want to choose for my recovery method here. I'm going to go with Azure, and then it's basically filling out 2 simple forms. And you'll see that we have the ability to do this for multiple VMs as well. So at the end of the day, we can actually do a batch migration of multiple VMs. But in this example, I'm just going to demonstrate one in this environment here. So let me go ahead and fill out my the region that I'm going to spin it up into. Actually, let me make sure I pick Central US here. There we go. And then the last thing is the availability zone, which I don't believe we have any set up. And then last page is the VM name itself. When I spin it up into Azure, do I want to keep the same VM name that I had on-prem? I'm going to actually give it a suffix here just to make sure we know that it's a new one out there. And then lastly, what are the resources we're going to use? Since we know that this VM has 2 CPUs and 2 gigs of memory, it defaults to a t-shirt size within the Azure profiles. We can actually override that here, but I'll leave it as default. And then when I'm done, I click on spin up, and then it should start off with the migration. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we don't require any compute resources running inside Azure AWS during the backup or copy process. The only exception to that rule would be this right here. When we're spinning it up, we actually do fire up a temporary worker in Azure to do the recovery process. But once he's done, he's turned off and he's deleted. And that's actually the longest period of this process right now, getting that VM started. And we actually go into our Azure portal, and you'll see that in a few seconds here, we're going to see a temporary worker instance come up. And there he is, he's already there, and he's got a random name assigned to him. His job is strictly to restore this VM. It usually takes a few minutes, and when he's done, we shut him down. So I'll let that continue here. We can actually monitor the process every single step of the way of that lift and shift operation. And you can see it's actually in the middle of doing that. Now, once this is completed, it becomes a native Azure VM. Then we can use HYCU for Azure and protect that workload as well. So let me log into that environment right here. And you can see this is the our true SaaS solution for protecting native cloud workloads. And once I log in here, you'll see my VMs across all my various regions inside Azure, as well as what resource groups they're part of. So once I have the VM spun up into Azure, we can actually go ahead and assign them to a backup policy and initiate a backup. So now you've migrated your on-prem workload into Azure, you've assigned it to a policy inside Azure, and now you can actually protect them natively inside Azure. So that's really a quick demonstration on how the solution works. And of course, we can always go backwards. We can always go and say, I want to take that same VM that's up in the cloud, and maybe you're done with utilizing that in the cloud and you want to bring them back. So the solution has the option to bring workloads back. Spin up from VM is another option that we have available to us. And that was it for the demonstration. One last thing I want to talk about, though, is our solution with I mentioned our cloud. Our cloud is a product that we announced at the beginning of I believe is March. It's the world's first platform data protection of SaaS workloads. As I mentioned, there's over 17,000 SaaS products in the US alone. And when you look at the recovery options available to them, there is no native data protection solution. So we've built a true data protection as a service for SaaS workloads, such as Salesforce, like Bamboo HR, Jira, Confluence, or even GitHub. And actually being able to create a logical, we call it treasure map or R graph, if you will, that shows the logical connectivity between all the various data points and showing you which parts are protected and which ones are not, using seamless single sign-on through Microsoft ADFS, for example, or even Okta. So as you can see, it's a very interesting and attractive solution, especially for customers that are migrating workloads natively into the cloud, maybe as a SaaS application, and wanting to have a complete data protection solution for that. Now, if you needed any more information on Protégé or even our cloud and our graph, please feel free to take a picture of the QR code here. They'll give you more information. Thank you.